The universe must have a cruel sense of humor. I had signed up for this cooking class in downtown Boston purely to distract myself from the wreckage of my last relationship, yet the very first night, when I walked into that industrial-style kitchen with its polished steel counters and faint smell of garlic, I found her sitting at the prep station across the room. None at her. Worse. Her older sister, Julia. I froze in the doorway, apron in hand, praying she hadn't noticed me. But of course she did. Her eyes, deep brown and sharper than I remembered, found me almost instantly. And then, with a smile that felt both dangerous and comforting, she patted the empty stool beside her. "Come on," she said, her voice low but carrying easily over the chatter of strangers. "We don't bite in here." The room spun for a second. Of all the classes in all the neighborhoods of this city, why did fate seat me next to Julia Rivera, the older sister of my ex-girlfriend, the woman whose memory I'd been running from for months? I slid onto the stool beside her because refusing would have been more obvious. The instructor, a cheerful man in his 40s with flour dusted across his jeans, began rambling about knife safety and basic cuts. But my pulse pounded so hard I could barely hear. Julia leaned in, her shoulder brushing mine as she reached for a cutting board. "Still hate onions," she whispered. I stiffened. My ex must have told her. Back when Sunday dinners at their family home meant me crying into a kitchen towel, while her sister laughed softly from across the table. "Not tonight," I muttered, forcing myself to grab an onion from the basket. My knife trembled as I set it down. Julia chuckled, low and infuriatingly warm. "Guess I'll handle it then." And just like that, she slid the onion toward herself and began slicing with the easy precision of someone who'd spent years in kitchens. Her hair slipped loose from her bun and framed her face, and I absolutely hated, that I noticed how beautiful she looked in this light. I wasn't supposed to notice. Not Julia. Never Julia. The universe was cruel. The class moved on to pasta dough, everyone laughing and fumbling with flour, while the instructor demonstrated how to knead. Julia worked beside me, sleeves rolled up, hands steady. I caught myself watching the way she leaned into the dough, focused and strong, her lips quirking in amusement whenever mine collapsed into sticky disaster. "Here," she murmured, reaching across. Her fingers brushed mine as she guided my palms into the right rhythm. The contact was fleeting but electric, a pulse that shot straight through me. I jerked my hands back as if burned. "I can do it," I snapped, more harshly than intended. Her eyes flicked up to mine, unreadable for a second. Then she smirked, backing away with her hands raised. "Suit yourself." But the warmth lingered where her skin had touched mine. By the time we sat down to eat our homemade pasta, my chest felt like a battlefield. Julia chatted easily with others at the table, her laughter spilling into the air like wine. She was magnetic. Always had been. The kind of person people lean toward without even realizing it. And I hated her for it. Because beneath the hatred was something else, something dangerous, want. When the evening ended, I thought maybe I'd escape her. That I could leave the class, walk into the cold Boston night, and never have to deal with Julia again. But as I packed my things, she appeared beside me, her perfume subtle and devastatingly familiar. "Same time next week?" she asked casually, slipping on her coat. I hesitated. "Why are you even here?" Her smile softened just slightly. "Maybe I like cooking." I narrowed my eyes. "Or maybe you like torturing me." She laughed, low and husky, and for one terrifying moment, I thought she might lean closer. Instead, she simply brushed past me toward the door. "See you next week, kid," she tossed over her shoulder. And I hated the way my heart stuttered when I realized I wanted her to mean it. The second week was worse. I told myself I wouldn't sit next to her, that I'd grab a spot by the window anywhere else. But Julia was already there when I walked in, one hand on the stool beside her as if reserving it. "You're late," she teased. "I'm not," I said stiffly, but I still sat down. The class was making soups that night, steam clouding the air as pots simmered on the burners. Julia hovered too close, reaching over me for spices, leaning in to murmur suggestions I didn't ask for. Her voice was velvet and smoke, and every time it touched my ear my breath caught. When my broth boiled over, she grabbed the spoon from my hand, steadying it with her own. For a heartbeat our fingers overlapped and my pulse roared. "You always were impatient," she said softly. I froze. Don't, but she was already turning back to the pot, stirring with calm precision, as if she hadn't just cracked open a wound I'd been stitching shut for months. The class ended with laughter, bowls of soup shared among strangers, and me avoiding Julia's gaze like it was a weapon. Yet when I walked out into the crisp night, she followed. "You're good at this," she said. "At cooking. At running away." The words hit like a knife. I turned, angry heat rising. "What do you want from me, Julia?" For once, her expression wasn't teasing. It was raw, almost vulnerable. "Maybe I want you to stop pretending." I blinked, stunned. "Pretending what?" "That you don't see me." My breath faltered, because the truth was I saw her. I always had, and that terrified me more than anything. Week 3, I swore I wouldn't come back. But Saturday night rolled around, and there I was again, tying on my apron with shaking hands. Julia was waiting. Of course she was. This time we were making bread. Kneading, folding, waiting for dough to rise. The entire process was intimate in a way that unsettled my slow, patient, demanding touch. Julia worked beside me silently at first, her focus uncharacteristically solemn. But when our eyes met across the flour-dusted counter, something shifted. The world narrowed to the space between us, the soft music in the background, the warmth of ovens filling the air. She reached across, brushing flour from my cheek with the back of her knuckle. "Messy," she whispered. I couldn't breathe, and for the first time I didn't pull away. I don't know if it was the warmth of the ovens, the smell of fresh bread, or just the way Julia's eyes lingered on me that night, but something cracked open inside me. I had spent months building walls, convincing myself that healing meant distance, that forgetting meant silence. And yet here she was brushing flour from my cheek, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I should have stepped back. Should have reminded her that she was my ex's sister, that this was dangerous and messy and unfair. Instead, I stood frozen, caught in the gravity of her gaze. "You're impossible," I whispered, my voice more fragile than I intended. Julia tilted her head, a faint smile curving her lips. "You keep saying that, but you're still here." Her words cut deeper than she knew. Or maybe she did know. Maybe she always had. That night after class, I tried to walk away quickly, clutching the paper bag of warm bread like it was a shield. But Julia followed, her footsteps echoing on the quiet Boston sidewalk. "You didn't answer me," she said finally. "Answer what?" I snapped, not slowing down. "Why you keep coming back?" I stopped dead, turning to her. "Maybe because I paid for the damn course." Julia laughed, a soft sound that somehow made my chest ache. "Sure. Keep telling yourself that." The streetlight cast a halo on her hair. Her features softened but her eyes sharp, too sharp. "Or maybe it's because you know what I know." My heart hammered. "And what's that?" She stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until there was barely a breath between us. "That it was never just her." The air left my lungs. "Don't," I whispered, my voice trembling. But Julia didn't touch me. She didn't need to. She just looked at me like she could see every hidden corner of me, every secret I had buried under excuses and fear. And I hated her for being right. The 4th week nearly broke me. We were making dessert starts, custards, delicate things that require patience I didn't have. I burned the crust, spilled cream on my apron, and cursed under my breath until Julia took over, laughing quietly as she fixed my disaster. "You're hopeless," she teased, sliding the tart into the oven. "You're smug," I shot back. Her grin widened. "You like that about me." I wanted to deny it. God, I wanted to. But the truth hung in the air between us, too heavy to ignore. When the tarts came out golden and perfect, Julia broke one in half, pressing the warm piece into my hand. "Here. Try it." I hesitated, then bit in. Sweet, rich, still steaming. She watched me, waiting. "It's good," I admitted reluctantly. Her eyes softened. "Better than good." And for a fleeting second, her thumb brushed the corner of my mouth, wiping away a crumb. The gesture was intimate, tender in a way that left me reeling. I barely tasted the rest of the tart. By the 5th week, I couldn't pretend anymore. Every time Julia leaned close, every time her laughter spilled into the room, every time her fingers brushed mine by accident or maybe not by accident, I felt my resolve shatter. I told myself I couldn't fall for her, that she was off limits, that it would be a betrayal of the past. But late at night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I couldn't deny the truth. Julia was all I could think about. And worse, she knew it. It happened after class in the parking lot the night we learned to make risotto. I was fumbling with my keys, still buzzing from the way she'd guided my hand on the spoon. Her voice low and warm in my ear when she spoke. "You're scared of me," she said softly. I froze. "I'm not." Her smile was sad, almost wistful. "You are. You think if you let yourself want me, it means everything before was a mistake." That she was a mistake. My throat closed. "Stop." Julia stepped closer, her breath mingling with mine in the cold night air. But maybe she wasn't the mistake. Maybe pretending not to feel this is. I stared at her, heart pounding so hard I thought it might break me open. "You can't say things like that," I whispered. "And why not?" "Because you're her sister." Silence. The kind that stretched and pressed until I couldn't breathe. Finally, Julia whispered, "I know." Her eyes burned into mine, filled with something fierce and aching. "But I can't help it." I turned away, tears stinging my eyes. "Neither can I." And for the first time I admitted it out loud. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. My mind spun with memories, with guilt, with the terrifying pull of everything Julia made me feel. I thought of her hand guiding mine, of her laughter filling the air, of the way she looked at me like I wasn't broken, like I wasn't just the ghost of her sister's ex. And I hated myself for how badly I wanted her. The 6th week I arrived late, hoping maybe I could slip in without drawing attention. But Julia was waiting, stool beside her empty, apron folded neatly on the counter. She didn't tease this time. Didn't smile. She just watched me as I tied the apron, her eyes quiet but stormy. We made stews, chopping vegetables, stirring pots, the silence between us louder than any words. Finally, as the aroma filled the room, she leaned in. "Do you ever think," she murmured, "that maybe this is where you were meant to end up?" I gripped the spoon tighter. "Don't." Her voice dropped. "I'm serious." "So am I." But when I looked at her, really looked, I saw the truth reflected back. She wasn't asking for a fling. She wasn't asking for games. She was asking me to stop running. And that terrified me more than anything. That night, when everyone else left, I lingered. So did she. We cleaned in silence, wiping counters, stacking bowls, the hum of the refrigerator filling the air. And then, without warning, Julia spoke. "She hurt you," she said. I froze. "That's none of your business." Her eyes met mine, unwavering. "It is if you think loving me means betraying her." The words lodged in my chest. "I don't." "Yes, you do." Her voice cracked just slightly. "And you're wrong." I stared at her, breath caught. She stepped closer, her hand hovering near mine but not touching. Loving her was real. But so is this. For a moment the world tilted. My pulse thundered in my ears, my throat tight with fear and longing. And then, without meaning to, I whispered, "Julia." The way she looked at me then, like I was the only person in the world, nearly undid me. I don't remember who moved first. One second Julia was standing across from me, her hand hovering near mine, her eyes daring me to stop pretending. The next, she was close enough that I could feel her breath against my lips. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. This was wrong. Complicated. Dangerous. She was the sister of the girl I had loved and lost. But my heart whispered something else. Something I was too tired to silence. Her fingertips brushed mine, barely a touch, but enough to shatter the last of my defenses. "Julia," that was all I managed before her lips met mine. It wasn't the kind of kiss I'd imagined in fleeting, shameful moments. It wasn't fiery or desperate. It was soft, careful. Question, not an answer. And God help me, I kissed her back. For one fragile heartbeat, everything else in me, the past, the guilt, fell away. There was only the warmth of her mouth, the tremor in her breath, the way her hand finally slid against my cheek like she'd been waiting years to do it. But then reality crashed down. I pushed her away so fast the dish towel fell from my hands. "No," I gasped, stumbling back. This is insane." Julia's face flickered with pain, but she didn't step closer. She just looked at me, eyes burning. "Tell me you didn't feel it. Look me in the eye and tell me." I couldn't. I shook my head, panic rising. "It doesn't matter what I felt. She was your sister, Julia. Your sister. And I loved her. Her jaw tightened. I know. I was there, remember? The words cut deeper than she intended. My throat burned. I can't do this. And before she could say anything else, I grabbed my bag and bolted. The streets of Boston blurred under the glow of streetlights as I walked fast, almost running, breadcrumbs from our lesson scattering in the paper bag at my side. My chest ached, torn between shame and longing. I didn't stop until I reached my apartment, collapsing against the door as if I'd outrun a storm. But storms don't stay outside. They follow you in. That night I dreamed of her. Not my ex Julia. Her laughter echoing through kitchens, her hands steadying mine, her lips soft and unrelenting. I woke up gasping, furious at myself. The next class I nearly didn't go. I told myself I was done, that I'd email the instructor, make up an excuse and disappear quietly. But Saturday night came, and there I was standing in front of the school again like a moth circling a flame. When I walked in, Julia wasn't there. Relief and disappointment hit me in equal measure. I slid into a seat, forcing myself to focus on the recipe instructions pinned to the board. Halfway through chopping carrots, she arrived. Her hair was damp from the snow outside, her cheeks flushed, and she didn't even look at me as she slipped into the seat beside mine. The silence between us was worse than the teasing, worse than the tension. It was hollow, heavy. I tried to focus on the stew, on the simmering pot, but every movement felt awkward with her so close yet unreachable. Finally, when the instructor stepped out to grab extra ingredients, I whispered, "We need to talk." Julia didn't look up. About what? You know what? Her knife stilled. Slowly, she lifted her gaze, her eyes steady and guarded. Do you regret it? The question slammed into me. My mouth opened but no sound came out. Did I regret it? The kiss? The way her touch made me feel alive in a way I hadn't since before the breakup? Yes, I said, forcing the word out, even as my chest cracked with the lie. I regret it. Julia's jaw flexed, but she nodded once. Then we're done here. She finished chopping, silent as stone, and for the rest of the night she didn't say a word to me. I thought it would make things easier. It didn't. The following week she didn't show up. Neither did I. For 2 weeks I avoided the cooking class, avoided the neighborhood, avoided anything that reminded me of her. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape. Her voice lingered in my head, her smile haunted me, and every time I tried to picture a future without her, it felt like standing in an empty room with no doors. The universe had played its cruel joke. I had signed up to forget love and found myself staring at it again, in the most impossible place. And this time running wasn't enough. When I finally gathered the courage to return, the class was smaller. Only a handful of students remained, scattered across the counters. My chest tightened as I scanned the room. Julia wasn't there. For a moment relief swept through me. And then, against all reason, disappointment followed, heavy and sharp. I forced myself to focus on the recipe homemade pizza dough, but my hands felt clumsy, my chest too tight. I couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep dancing around the ghost of what I wanted. And just when I decided to leave, the door creaked open. She walked in. Her eyes swept the room, landed on me, and for a heartbeat the world stopped. She hesitated, then crossed the floor, sliding into the seat beside mine like she'd never been gone. Neither of us spoke. We just cooked. Flour on our hands, dough stretching beneath our palms, heat rising from the oven. Side by side, silent, yet more connected than I could stand. Finally, as we pulled the pizzas out, Julia murmured, "I tried to stay away." My chest tightened. Me too. She glanced at me, her face raw and unguarded. Didn't work. I swallowed hard, the truth burning in my throat. No, it didn't. And for the first time I let myself admit it, not out loud but to myself. I didn't want it to. That night, when class ended, Julia didn't follow me outside. She didn't tease or push or ask questions. She just handed me a slice of pizza wrapped in foil, her fingers brushing mine for the briefest moment. "Take care," she whispered. And then she walked away. I stood there on the sidewalk, holding that warm, ridiculous slice of pizza, and realized something terrifying. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I thought the silence between us would last forever. Weeks went by after the pizza night and still Julia didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't chase me down the street with her sarcastic smirk or show up late to class with damp hair and a smile that made me forget how to breathe. And I told myself that was good. That I needed distance, needed time, needed to scrub her out of my chest like a stain that refused to fade. But the thing about silence is that it doesn't heal, it festers. And every night lying awake I kept circling back to the same thought. I had kissed her and for a moment the world made sense. Then I ran. Again. It was me who needed to stop running. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I was walking through the riverway one afternoon, trying to distract myself with the turning leaves and the hum of the city. And then I saw her, Julia, sitting on a bench with a coffee in one hand, her other hand rubbing her temple like she was carrying the weight of something too heavy. I almost walked past. Almost chose the easier road. But instead I stopped. Her eyes lifted, and the surprise in them gave way to something softer. Hey. I sat down, careful to leave just enough space between us. Hey. We stayed like that for a moment, the hum of traffic filling the silence. Finally she sighed. You've been avoiding me. I swallowed. You didn't exactly call either. Her laugh was short, bitter. Figured you needed space. I turned to her, the words clawing up my throat. What if I don't want space? Her eyes snapped to mine. And in them I saw all the questions she'd been holding back. All the hurt. All the hope. Then what do you want? She asked quietly. I exhaled shakily, my hands trembling. I want to stop being scared. I want to stop pretending I don't feel this. I want God, Julia, I want you. Her coffee slipped from her hand, forgotten. She stared at me like she wasn't sure if she could believe it. And then slowly, she reached across the bench and took my hand. It was such a small thing. Warm skin against mine, steady and certain. But it was everything. It wasn't simple after that. Of course it wasn't. There were fights. Nights when guilt crept in like a shadow, whispering that I was betraying someone who had once meant the world to me. Julia had her own walls, her own anger, her own fears of what her family would think if they ever knew. We argued in kitchens, over takeout containers and half-burnt pasta. We pulled apart and came back together, over and over like the tide. But with every fight, every crack, every reconciliation, something grew stronger between us. Love. Not the reckless, burning love I'd once known. Not the kind that leaves you gasping and hollow when it's gone. But something steadier. Deeper. Like bread rising slowly in a warm oven, patient, inevitable. The night it all shifted, we were back in a kitchen. Not the cooking class this time. My kitchen. Julia had come over after work, dropping her bag by the door, her hair mussed from the wind. We were making dinner together, something simple, spaghetti with garlic bread. I was chopping herbs when she leaned against the counter, watching me. You still hate onions, she teased. I rolled my eyes. And you still think you're better than everyone else because you can dice them without crying. She laughed, but there was something soft in her expression. Something unguarded. When I turned to wash my hands, she caught my wrist gently, turning me back toward her. I love you, she said. Just like that. No warning. No build-up. My breath caught. Her eyes were steady, certain. I know it's messy. I know it's complicated. But I'm done hiding it. I love you. For a moment the world fell silent. The knife on the counter, the pot bubbling on the stove, the city humming outside, it all disappeared. And then, finally, I let myself say it back. I love you too. It wasn't the end of the story. Love never is. There were still awkward family dinners to face, still old wounds that would take years to fully heal. There were still nights when I woke with the ghost of the past heavy on my chest, and mornings when Julia held me until it faded. But we built something brick by brick. We built laughter into our mornings, quiet touches into our evenings, forgiveness into every day in between. And slowly, the weight of the past loosened its grip. Months later, we stood together on a rooftop, the Boston skyline glittering behind us. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of spring. Julia slipped her hand into mine, her thumb brushing my skin. Remember the first night of that class? She asked, a smile tugging at her lips. I laughed softly. I remember you stealing my onion. She leaned closer, her forehead resting against mine. Best decision I ever made. I closed my eyes, breathing her in. Signing up for that class was mine. And for once, the universe didn't feel cruel. It felt like maybe just Maybite had known what it was doing all along. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.